it is quite clear that with AS Botswana, all the youth entrepreneurs will be equipped with all the skills and knowledge that they need to compete in the local and global markets. We're coming into an exciting part of our program. We will be doing our first panel discussion. Our first panel discussions will discuss the integration of youth businesses into the digital global supply chain, but focusing on the trade and funding perspective. I'd like to welcome on stage Mr. Kennedy Lutlogela, who will be leading this discussion as the moderator. Just to give a brief on Mr. Lutlogela, he is a regional integration expert, currently serving as a junior technical advisor for GIZ, supporting the SADC Secretariat. He has consulted for the African Union on AFC, TFA, International Trade Center, and several other organizations under building, communication, frameworks, and support to policy alignment exercises and general program. He's also an entrepreneur. He's a young entrepreneur who owns an events managing company called La Cuisine by Ken. Ladies and gentlemen, your moderator.
Am I audible? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, MC. Thank you so much, Mphoeng, for seeing it fit that we convene here today. And ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you all to the first panel discussion, where we will be discussing the integration of youth businesses into digital global supply chains, a trade and funding perspective. Allow me to now call upon stage as you know, this is a hybrid of us here physically and those also who are joining us virtually. We will be having two panelists who will be joining us virtually, and one of them will be here with us today. Allow me to call him on stage, Mr. Mphoeng. And just to give you a brief introduction, Mr. Mphoeng is a director in the data analytics and digital transformation company called Spectrum Analytics, which specializes in consulting, business process improvement, enterprise solution and training in relation to data management and analytics. He holds an MSc in finance from the Manchester Business School and a bachelor's degree in finance from the University of Botswana. Mphoeng also holds the International ACI Treasury Dealing Certificate and has done a senior management development program with the University of Stellenbosch. Before working full-time with the Spectrum Analytics, he was a lecturer at the University of Botswana and teaching finance and investment. Before that, he had worked with the Botswana Insurance Fund Management as a portfolio manager for unlisted credit. Prior to that, BIFM. And he was also employed as head of fixed income trading for Botswana and Zambia at Standard Chartered Bank, mainly trading in the Botswana government bonds. His career started in 2006 at the Bank of Botswana, where he was a trainee supervisor, managing the Botswana Foreign Reserves for the International Dealing and Strategy Unit in the Financial Markets Department between the years 2006 and 2009. He currently sits on the board of Aeon Botswana and Botswana Privatization Asset Holding as an independent non-executive director. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our first panelist.
Thank you. I always sound a lot more impressive than I actually am.
Trust me, there is a reason why you're sitting on the other side here. This is impressive. Allow me to now, go digital and also international or continental in this case, and welcome our second panelist. His name is Charles Shiaka. Charles is a professional business developer with more than 4 years experience in managing and developing business opportunities. He's passionate about innovation, entrepreneurship, nurturing talent, and has supported more than 100 startups through his career. He joins us from Rwanda. His name is Charles Shiaka. Can we have a round of applause for Charles? Business developer with more than 4 years experience in managing and developing. And then lastly, we have Benny Ngwama from the United Kingdom. Benny, can you hear us?
Benny's on mute.
Can you just mute so we also consider this an audio check? Benny, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Yes.
All right, perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you our panelists. Now, on January the 1st, 2021. Consider this an audio check.
Okay.
Benny, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, but it seems that you can't. Can you hear me? Yes.
Okay, is that Charles? We had forgotten to check him. Perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you our panelists. Now, on January the 1st, 2021. All right, so on January the 1st, 2021, the African Free Trade Continental Agreement started to trade under its preferential term, the world's largest trading bloc with about 54 countries, including 3 major economies, being Nigeria, South Africa, and Egypt. This is considered to not only enhance regional economic integration within the region, but also to provide a platform to ensure that we are now enhancing what we call the global digital supply chain within positioning Africa to the rest of the world. Now, as we start here, I would like to just perhaps open the floor to Mr. Mphoeng and really ask, why do we consider, number one, the AfCFTA so important and critical to ensuring that, young businesses are sustainable? And how should these companies take advantage of it?
Thanks for that, Ken. I think the most important thing to note the African Continental Free Trade Area is the fact that we are now opening a market here, 1.2 billion people. Now, if you're in Botswana, which is a country of 2 million people, you start to think of companies. One of my favorite companies right now, like the Bulb World, which manufactures and its market has been the 2 million Botswana that it has, and now it effectively has access to 1.2 billion people. Its market is just multiplied 600 times, right? And they're looking at a GDP of about 2.5 trillion. So that's really exciting, I think, for most African entrepreneurs who are now selling, especially in some of the smaller countries. Now, the only problem with that is that, as we all know, Africa's not a country. Right? So what you're effectively then doing is, as you create more opportunities, you're also creating a lot more unknowns and uncertainties when it comes to decision making. As you cross into different markets and you cross into different countries. Now, what this means is sort of having control and understanding what's happening in your supply chain becomes a lot more difficult, and insight into that starts to become a whole lot more difficult. So in terms of being able to look at data now, to sort of, when we're talking of the supply chain aspect, we have to remember that data is being generated in the supply chain in many different places. So your client data, your customer data, how they're interacting with your websites, how are they ordering, how are you dealing with your suppliers, the truck that's driving from Botswana to DRC, how long are they spending at the borders, how fast are they driving, what's happening with fuel consumption. You're generating a lot of data and therefore you also then need to make a lot of decisions based on that data. Now, the problem here is, and that's really going to determine who wins. So utilizing that data efficiently is going to be the thing that determines who wins when this free trade area starts to go very well. So it's going to be about your data is what's going to be informing you to be able to be competitive and to reduce costs and to improve service and basically to be increasingly efficient. To give you an example, that's why an Alibaba or an Amazon are successful as they are. They just really have learned how to use their data and their processes to inform their supply chain and their service. So basically, whilst this is going to be great it's going to be great for trade and opportunities, it will create challenges, and the people who take advantage of that and build the right kind of infrastructure on that are the ones that are going to benefit the most and win this particular opportunity.
You've given us great perspective, especially on the modalities really of trading, issues that go with ease of trade, infrastructure, border issues, and everything that really has to be summed up into an easier trade facilitation. But I want to bring Charles, if you can hear me. How do you think, Charles, that on a more digital perspective here, that we are doing as African young businesses trying to participate within the global supply chain? Has there been any presence? And if not, where should we be looking in terms of finding ourselves being intentional about being part of such a dimension? How do you think, Charles, that on a more digital perspective? Where should we be looking in terms of finding ourselves being intentional about being part of such a dimension? On a more digital perspective, on the technical side, any way of checking if Charles is either with us or if he can hear us? Not. Where should we be looking in terms of finding ourselves being intentional about being on a more digital perspective? On the technical side, any way of checking if Charles is either with us or if he can hear us? Not. Where should we be looking in terms of finding ourselves being intentional about being on a more digital perspective? And further inquire or perhaps deliberate more on your submission here. How then do we really support and ensure that young businesses do become the winners here? I mean, like you say, a lot of data then requires a lot of digitalization to ensure that you're able to package and you're able to have your analytics, and they not only you have them, but they inform an ease of doing things and ensuring that you are at least cost effective so you make more money in this case, right? But we understand the challenges, especially in African, economies. And when we speak of young entrepreneurs, there is a certain limitation there when it comes to accessibility to digitalization. How do we create platforms or policies that ensure that we are at least incubating or sustainably ensuring that these young businesses have access to digitalization that informs their participation in such platforms?
That's not an easy question, but it's also an extremely important one. When you look at the ability to take advantage of the latest tech, unfortunately, it comes at a cost. For you to be able to actually utilize the latest sort of technologies that we have out there that can make a company competitive. Now, when you are a small company, I mean, note that I use the examples of Amazon and Alibaba, which are effectively the biggest companies in the world. But what does that mean for a young entrepreneur or manufacturer in Kenya or in Rwanda or even in Botswana? And the ability to actually take those on. And that's going to be a very big challenge, which the different governments are going to have to take care of that. You're going to have to create an infrastructure. So for us as a country to move from Botswana being where it is to going into the fourth industrial revolution, you are going to need a very heavy investment on the side of the government to ensure that that kind of infrastructure to be able to take care of stuff like that becomes fairly easy. I mean, one of the biggest things that we all know in Africa is the cost of internet, right? So you're going to need to be able to make all of that cheaper. Whilst we are building hubs where as we were building hubs where we are giving people internet and fast internet, we then need to start thinking about how do we create platforms that the average entrepreneur can plug into. So you can imagine where you create almost an Amazon, whether it be for Botswana or for Africa or what, that gives people that platform that they can plug into. If you look at companies like Canva, which is a website development company, Canva is just simply a platform. It's a platform that someone can come in, plug in, and be able to use all those different things. So we are going to have to creatively find those kind of solutions where we are able to create large platforms where different entrepreneurs can easily plug in, and that'll reduce the cost of having to effectively create our own systems in each and every single company.
I don't know if I'm okay. Yes, I'm audible now. I'm very new to mics and stuff. I don't think I'm much of a public speaker.
You're doing okay.
All right. Benny, I'd like to bring you in here, particularly because you sit now in the United Kingdom, and we know that before COVID, the United Kingdom was undergoing such a monumental process within regional integration and, standing alone, but also looking for new avenues to really trade, and that being Brexit. Now we have this platform as Africa, and African companies and youth companies that are looking to really now, go global. Where do you think the interlink is there? And how do you see the United Kingdom Brexit policies and how they will look intertwining with, young businesses here? And how do we harness opportunities to ensure that we find ourselves in a global chain that allows us to be trading as far as the United Kingdom under a fully fledged and broken away United Kingdom?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, as you mentioned, by the way, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Brilliant. Yeah, so that's a great question. So early last year, actually, we had the Africa and UK Investment Summit, and essentially what that was essentially a policy initiated by the UK to essentially increase investments into Africa, because traditionally or historically, the investment flow that has been going on has been mostly through foreign aid. And due to COVID, due to the need to find more global partners, i.e. US, China, the US, China, and Europe, given that Europe, became out of the EU, Africa seems as, a growing global power in which the UK wants to tap into. So what that event was, we had, individuals and ministers from all across Africa coming to essentially present their case as their country being a place whereby the UK can do business with. So in terms of going forward, I can look at this more from a tech perspective. So my startup, what we do essentially is we build a platform that allows the African diaspora in the UK initially to be able to invest in companies in Africa. And what we're doing essentially is we're looking to democratize the process of investing African businesses. So these kind of policies that government has in terms of investing in Africa is very much limited to big corporations and, you know, governmental bodies. So what we're trying to do is essentially allow the same opportunities to be given to African individuals living in the UK. And I think the way that African countries and African businesses can essentially make themselves investable is by adopting certain business cultures and business and practice to essentially remove the stigma that African businesses are somewhat corrupt, somewhat fraudulent, or they somehow lack the skills to deliver the same kind of service or products that we see from Western businesses. So it's a simple case of African entrepreneurs, whether they be young, established, to essentially be able to showcase that they're able to compete on level playing field as Western businesses, but also they have strong internal cultures from a compliance perspective, from a organization perspective, to be able to absorb investments, but also to be able to do business in a way that's transparent. And I think once you know, African businesses can readily exhibit that, that is when I think, you know, the UK and UK businesses, UK multinationals can start to look to African businesses as, you know, partners on an equal footing.
Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you. I think that's very important, especially when we are really now looking at opportunities that will lie with, you know, a fully concluded Brexit that is now operational and obviously looking for new avenues of trade outside just the European Union. I don't know if we still have Charles on the line. Can we try one last time? Charles, can you hear us? All right, so maybe to come to you, Mphoeng, before we now start to wrap up, I'm interested to know, we've discussed what needs to happen. We need for companies or young entrepreneurs to now, you know, be having that data analytics and all of that, but we haven't really talked about the competency there and how they actually get it correct. You know, how do they ensure that indeed the data that they're collecting or the research that goes into all of that, you know, really reflects into the actual situation on the ground?
Thank you for that question. Data analytics and the 4IR is stuff that's really become a buzzword, right? And rightfully so. And, you know, as a company, Spectrum Analytics, we've seen, I would say, in the past 2 to 3, we're getting a lot more people asking this and looking to move themselves, you know, to becoming, you know, data enabled and being able to take data-driven decisions. Now, what we've also seen is that there's a fundamental misunderstanding of the kind of work that needs to go into something like that. So, you know, people see the nice reports and the nice spreadsheets and they think that is all the work. And this is something that's every single company, including the ones that are going to try to use these kind of skills and technologies on the supply chain, and what different African entrepreneurs are going to have to deal with is to make sure that you're getting it correct. So, you know, whilst people see the analytics, they're seeing that, you know, the icing on the cake, or as in the sense of an athlete, they see someone coming to perform on stage, but they don't really know, you know, the work that comes behind it. They don't realize that for Usain Bolt to come and run in 9 seconds, whatever it is, he's had a whole year of training behind that. Now, something that's extremely important and that companies need to get correct is something that's called data management. Data management effectively is the process of how you're going to collect your data, how you're going to store it, how you're going to organize it, make sure it's clean, maintain it, and how you then effectively then use it. So the first thing, as with anything, is in data management, the first thing that we're worrying about is the architecture. So have you drawn up a plan, a data plan that knows where everything, how you're collecting your data? So to give you an idea, think of a scenario where someone's ordering on your website. So firstly, you're collecting all the customer data that's happening there on the website and interactions. You are then having to worry about, once that order's gone in, somebody at the warehouse has to actually go pick up whatever product, put it onto a car. That car then has to go deliver it to the right client on time, Every point there, you're collecting data, whether it's from moving it from the shelf into the car, how long it takes. And you therefore need to know all your different data points and where you're getting them and how you are effectively organizing them. So that's the architecture side of things. After doing that, you actually have to create infrastructure that makes sure that you are actually collecting all of this and they're all going to the right place. On top of that, then you need to create a data warehouse. So you need to create a place where all of this actually comes and sits. And once all of that is set there, you are able to start looking at cleaning your data, making sure that the data is all usable, making sure that it interacts well, and then only then after cleaning all of that, you are now then thinking about actually doing any analytics. On top of this, you have to add security, so hackers and things like that, and then lastly, something called data governance. So how are you using the data, the ethics behind that, customer privacy, all of those. So when you actually get to the analytics, you are looking at potentially 10 to only 20% of the work, and that's where companies like ourselves. That's where we add service as a consultancy company. You need to think of this field and analytics almost in the same way that companies deal with legal and marketing, where you think, yes, we must build some level of internal capacity, but you definitely need a consultant who will come in and walk you through. We've actually seen quite a lot of companies who decide that they will hire one person and say, make us data driven. It's really a team sport, and there's a lot of work that goes into there. And most companies are going to, unfortunately, have to go through the route of finding consultants who put all of that in place. And then to sort of speak to your previous question, then now it becomes a problem when somebody says, if it's that amount of effort, can I afford it? And how do we then, as an ecosystem, try to create a scenario where those kind of skills, the kind of skills that we have, we are able to sort of create a platform that then allows for younger, smaller companies to be able to actually plug in and be able to use those kind of skills. And as an ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Mphoeng. I think that that clarifies a lot.
Try to create a scenario.
That clarifies a lot for us,
Where,
but it also still leaves me with the question. And like you said, how do we find ourselves in a situation that we have the support for young businesses to actually get that kind of technical support to go digital and to actually have the data? Perhaps, Charles, if you can hear us, you can come in here to maybe just give us a bit of insight as to how we can really support entrepreneurs to integrate into the digital global supply chain. Okay, Charles, we can see you, but we can't hear you. And your mic seems to be unmuted. I don't know if there's any support we can get from the tech team. Can you try mute and unmute your mic again, Charles?
Me
Can
now?
you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
There's any support we can get from
Yeah,
the
Charles,
tech
I
team?
can.
Charles, can you try mute and unmute your mic again, Charles?
Can you hear me now? Hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me? Maybe I've removed the video to see whether you can hear me. I can actually hear you clearly.
Yeah.
So,
I can hear you, Charles.
yeah, me now?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
There's any support we can get from
Yeah,
the
Charles,
tech team? Charles, can you try mute and unmute your mic again, Charles?
Can you hear me? Now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can hear you, Charles. Please proceed.
Yeah, me now?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
There's any support we can get from
Yeah,
the
Charles,
tech team?
Repeating the voice. I don't know what really going on, but I don't know whether I can go ahead. Thank you very much. And the question is more like asking how we can support entrepreneurs. Yeah, is that a question? Sorry.
That is indeed the question, Charles. How do you envision us supporting entrepreneurs more for them to efficiently integrate into the
Thank you very much. And
the
the
digital
question
global
is
chain?
asking how we can support entrepreneurs. Is that a question? Sorry. Some of the
that is indeed the question, Charles. How do you envision us supporting entrepreneurs more for them to efficiently integrate into the
Thank you very much. And
the
the
digital
question is
global chain?
more like asking how we can. There's an echo repeating itself. I don't know whether the text will really help with that, but I'm repeating myself every second. I don't know. Some of the reasons why maybe
how do you envision us supporting entrepreneurs?
There's an echo repeating itself. I don't know whether the text will really help with that, but I'm some of the reasons why maybe
can you please communicate with us here? Is this something fixable, or shall we proceed?
The text will really help with that, but I'm some of the
okay, in the interest of time, I don't know, Benny, if you're still there, would you like to perhaps come in and just give us your input here? How do you think we can better support these African entrepreneurs to ensure that they're well integrated into the digital supply chain?
Some of the
okay, so in the interest of time, I don't know, Benny, if you're still there, would you like to perhaps come in and just give us your input here? How do you think we can better support these African entrepreneurs to ensure that they're well integrated into the digital supply chain?
Some of the
so I can still hear.
So in the interest of time, I don't know, Benny, if you're still there, would you like to perhaps come in and just give us your input here? How do you think we can better support these African entrepreneurs to ensure that they're integrated into the supply chain?
Some of the
so I can still hear.
So in the interest of time, okay, I think at this point I will open the floor for questions. And while we give the tech team some time to sort themselves out, I will only direct the questions to Mphoeng for now. And if they do give us a lead that we seem to be fine on the tech side, then we can proceed with asking the rest of the panelists. Any questions from the floor? No questions. So perhaps let's then wrap up. We've really unpacked what it would mean to have youth integrating into the digital global supply chain, and what the AFCFTA presents as opportunities in terms of a platform that enhances for that to happen. And some of the challenges that we've articulated here are really around data collection, its management, its accuracy, and also analyzing that kind of data. So in respect to that, and in reflection, what would be your last words for any entrepreneur here or viewing at home or in their office, who are part of this discussion today? How do they, package themselves? How do they get ready? Any last words of advice as to how they get ready for what seems to be the new dawn for Africa in terms of trade?
So I'll just reiterate some of the things I've said. Look, the biggest thing to take away is the fact that we now have a huge market that all of our African entrepreneurs will have access to. And the reality is that, whether there are challenges or not, somebody's going to is going to win that. Somebody's going to become the African Amazon or the African Alibaba. We might not see it this year, but it will definitely happen. And therefore, there has to be some level of investment, by any company that hopes to win that kind of a race, for any company that is looking at supply chain and logistics, and is going to have to think about doing that and investing in something like that. Now, how we do that, we might have to be a bit more innovative, because yes, as much as we have companies like ourselves who could help with those kind of thoughts, the reality of it is that costs might be a barrier to entry and to be able to utilize all of that. So what's going to be important is that the ecosystem, and not just to say government, but also just the general ecosystem, as entrepreneurs, as tech people, one of the things in Botswana that is definitely a weakness in our industry is the fact that we are not, we don't have somewhere where we get together and work together and things like that. So it's extremely important that we create a community, and we see all of the different things that other people are doing and put all of those innovations together to create a platform that could potentially be able to be beneficial to everybody else. And I think that's the reality. You're going to find that the company that does win, and especially in this e-commerce space, might not even be a company it might just be the platform. So if you think about it, and an Alibaba and an Amazon are not the ones selling things. They are just the platform where other people can plug in and therefore be able to get access. And it's cheap to be able to do that onto those specific platforms. So that's probably the race in Africa, for us to genuinely unlock the opportunities with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, you're going to have to see somebody step into that space. And it doesn't have to be one. As I said, it could be a community effort. And we hope to see it soon. It's going to be a very interesting ride, since Africa is extremely different and it'll be uncharted territory, but there's also a ton of money to be made in that space then.
Definitely. Tech team, you've got a question. Please come in.
Great. All right, What I'd like to appreciate with the African Free Trade Agreement is that we're exposed to $1 trillion market, right? Which is a good thing and a bad thing. So now, that means we're also exposed to giants. So what needs to be done for SMEs and bots to be protected from giants that we're competing in the African market?
That's the. So it's not even just about Botswana, right? It's about how are we going to ensure that some of the 3 or 4 big giants. I mean, in our instance, it's probably South Africa, but I can imagine countries around Nigeria and all of that. The Egypts are going to feel the same way. They're going to feel like South African companies are simply going to come in and encroach. And I've had this debate many a time, and always tread into protectionist territory, right? But the reality of it is that, you know, we can try to protect different companies as much as we can, but the reality is that for Botswana, what I've seen is there's a lot of untapped market that isn't even taken care of in countries like, for argument's sake, Zambia, to win and compete in SA, right? My sort of how to develop whatever product you're trying to fall onto things like Pusher BW for a temporary amount of time, so not forever, and then start looking into countries where the competition isn't as stiff. So, you know, you must have seen if companies like not Okasi, companies like Dala are actually making quite a lot of movements into countries like Lesotho, into countries like Namibia, into Zambia, into Zimbabwe. Why? Because maybe the South African companies aren't looking at that as much. So that's the kind of thinking that we probably need to do as a lot of younger Botswana companies, is we probably need to look up in Africa rather than to worry about or try to compete with the South Africans. There's definitely still a lot of space for things that for companies that can still enter and take up space in that area. So I don't think you're going to ever have a scenario where the big guy kills absolutely everything in the market. There's probably enough of a niche and enough of a market that you can find your own little pocket and make enough money without necessarily having to be number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, or even number 5. You know, so that for me would be my answer.
Yeah. Okay. So young entrepreneur, fall into organizations that are incubating to ensure that your product is, you know, directed to the actual market access that would actually allow you to participate and benefit from, you know, such initiatives. Because we've had so many tech issues today, I would like to ask our panelists to please continue this conversation on your different social media platforms. Let's find a way to really, especially Benny and Charles, who have not been able to say much today. If we do follow you on social media, we hope you do give us your perspective and also your thinking around how really we can now support entrepreneurs to ensure that they are part of this global supply chain. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but allow me to thank my 3 panelists, Mr. Mphoeng from Botswana, Charles Shiaka from Rwanda, and Benny Nwama from the United Kingdom. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure.